Hey, good evening, guys. Ken at Tortoise Capital. This is the Monday night Creativity 202 check in for Team USA and Mexico and Australia. Uh, November 14th, 2022. We're on lesson 21. The tweaker, if I recall. The tweaker. So we'll start with a quick check in in the order I see you on the screen. How are we doing today, Glenn?
Hanging in there. We've been battling flu for the past week, so taking it easy, lots of rest, and also preparing for some cold weather. I've heard rumors of 3 to 5 inches of snow
Yikes.
coming in the next 2 days, potentially. So first snowfall of the season. So trying to get things ready around here for the cold weather that's coming.
All hands batten down the hatches. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're just shifting to the indoor game this week. This was our last outdoor practice Sunday. It was around 30, so the kids were ready to go inside. That's my check in this week. We're doing all right here. Nicole, how are you doing?
Thank you for asking. I'm doing well. I found a dog that is really cute, and so I am keeping him. So he is the next addition to the furry friendly family, and I named him Rogue, and he's got tick disease. So he's kind of in a bad spat right now, but we're gonna get over that. I'll send you pictures of Rogue. He's pretty cute. So
Did you find him or did he find you?
I know, right? They always find me. They always find me. And he is, if I can tell you guys, probably Mexican street dogs are Mexican street dogs. Like, they're street dogs, but this dog is not a street dog. And he doesn't know, like, even the cars, he doesn't know how to navigate. So, and God, he's beautiful. He is just gorgeous. I mean, I can't wait to send you guys pictures, but the real thing is pretty cool. So, yes.
Cool. Alrighty. Luke, how are we doing?
Yeah, all good down here. We're getting the warmer months while you get the cold months. So we're relishing in the fact now that for the last 6 months we've been saying how warm it is. So now we're getting the warmer climate, but we've also got the floods as well around the state. So that hasn't been too much fun. Um, I'm just still trying to assimilate all the information from the crypto course from Jeff and Bill. And that was just, it's like hearing so many things I've heard before, and they just say it in different ways, but also similar ways. So I found that
Yeah.
course really good, and I haven't had a chance to do all of it yet, but I'm really excited to do that. But other than that, no, all good down here.
Awesome. Yeah, I've heard really good things about the course. So I'm happy for those guys. And Dan, how are we? Unmuted.
Doing pretty well.
Okay.
I had a few days in San Diego for a cybersecurity, digital identity conference, and now I'm back home and had weather was very warm last week, but then it took a turn for the cold, and we're down to the low 40s now. And that's okay, I guess. Brought the plants inside. I'm starting Libby Adams' 28-day program. I started it today. That's between that and some of the middle lessons of the Super Trader Awakening, it's kind of making my head spin.
Yep. Yeah, I listened to who do they have today? Stuart Mooney, the American Buddha, and who's the other? Patricia Keel. That were previewing their spiritual awakening workshop that's coming up. Yeah, Stuart. Had never met Patricia Keel before. Stuart Mooney, I've been aware of for a few years. The American Buddha, and he went back with Van quite a long ways. I was interested to hear that. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get us started then. A lot to cover tonight, I'm sure. Looking forward to your stories. And so this will move us into sacred story space. And here we go. And they're off. Glenn.
I suppose I have a couple of stories to tell in this lesson. I'll start from the drawing exercise. And I need to pull it up to make sure I get the questions right. The Enzo. And I felt a little cheeky when I wrote my answers down. But I've had some, shall we say, revelations or insights from doing the exercise, and then I'll go back up to the tweaking part. But this is what I wrote down when I first encountered the exercise. I drew a circle, starting and drawing clockwise, the way the example was given. Didn't necessarily feel natural, but my circle came out, and I've since drawn many ones, but this is the one that was there. So what is the center of your Enso? Nothing. I think I also have a bit of my daughter instilled in me because her answer for most questions nowadays is nothing. How do you feel? Nothing. What do you want to eat? Nothing. Do you want to play this? Nothing. So anyway, what is the center of your Enso? Nothing. What belongs there? Nothing. How do you keep it there? I don't. What do you do with it once you have it? Let it go. Who do you share it with? Anyone and everyone. How do you give it away? Being present with whoever is here. What happens when you surrender and empty yourself? Awareness. When there is nothing, what is next? Nothing. Only the present. Those were my answers. And as I sat down and drew more of them, partially while listening to yesterday's Europe session, I sat and drew more and experimented clockwise, anti-clockwise. And it made me think of the effortless mastery, and I could see in the circle how much of my ego showed up by how many bumps there were and how circular it was. Whether I was trying to make a circle, or if there was effort in the circle, it came out all sorts of squiggly and square and not round at all. If I just was literally nothing, it came out perfect. You couldn't even necessarily tell where it ended or started. And so that for me was my take home from the Enso, was it's a quick check on how much of my ego is here. And watching, I do much better with my eyes closed than actually, if I'm watching and engaging my eyes, my ego gets involved. It takes over and control, and it gets bumpy, lopsided, all sorts of things. So for me, the Enso exercise was a way to recognize quickly, at least in this little circle, how much of my ego is present in this activity. And that's my takeaway for trading, is how much is my ego involved in the trade? And sort of that will be my segue into the tweaking, in that, as I mentioned last week, I've had a lot of stuff swirling around, and that linchpin is, I felt was nearby. I was on the verge of tapping it. And my linchpin that I found is a tweak to the plan, prepare, execute. The art for me has always been assess. But the linchpin I discovered is, what are you assessing? The execution. What's going on in the moment when you are pushing the buy or sell button? What's your mental state? Why are you pushing that buy or sell button? What's going on? Is there ego involved? Are you trying to get rid of an unwanted emotion? Is it fear of missing out, fear of losing, fear of being wrong? What's going on? Are you not clear on your rules? Is there doubt and uncertainty? Are you trying to jump on board? But all of those questions arise and are answered in the moment of execution. Just like in that moment of drawing the circle, it's the execution that is the vital key, the tweak, that has to be looked at in order to find the answer and do all of the assessment and figure out whatever else is going on. If you haven't planned appropriately, you're not going to know when to execute or what to execute. The same with preparation. Do you have everything up? And you can't assess anything if you haven't done anything. I've been listening to a podcast, motivational podcast. Dr. Rob Gilbert made some news lately, got sent around. He does a 3-minute phone call, has been leaving messages on his answering machine since 1990, I believe. He's up to like 11,500 and something messages as of the one that I'm listening to. And there's a podcast out now. You can go catch up. But he says knowledge without actions leaves you nothing. K minus A equals 0. If you know what to do, but don't actually do it, then you have nothing. What's the use of knowing it? So it's the action, the execution is the center point that checks your knowledge, confirms your knowledge, and gives you the ability to evaluate what you don't know and the emotions that are showing up. Is the execution is the moment that we have to look at to improve our trading. And that's my tweak on plan, prepare, execute, assess. That is my linchpin discovery from everything that was swirling around, and is my lesson from this week and the tweak on what I've been learning so far. Aho. You're still muted.
What was that fellow's name? I didn't. His last name?
Rob Gilbert.
Gilbert.
He's a professor at Montclair State in New Jersey, has been for like 40 some odd years. I'll send you a link.
Yeah. Are those messages to his own answering machine? Like messages to self, kind of?
No, they are for people to call in and listen to. He had a phone number
okay.
people could call in. They would call in, and you would get a 3-minute message from him, and you would have a chance to leave him a message after the beep. So, sports psychology was his class.
Got it.
So,
I'll just, before I forget, that's an interesting take on the assessing the intention as opposed to the technical execution of did I execute a rule? No, and you're really just saying, hey, let the technique be what it is, but examine the intention underneath it. Yeah, that's
Well, you can evaluate technique as well. That's the
yeah.
first fork in the road.
Yeah.
But that's it. If you can't execute the technique, what's the intention behind there? What's driving?
For what was getting in the way, since the
Wait,
technique is really see rule push button kind of deal. Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. What was the motive force behind that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me get back to our regularly scheduled. That really grabbed me though. Dan.
Um, Thank you for showing your drawings, Glenn. I wasn't going to going to show mine, but since you did, I'll do the same. The story behind these is that and it's a question of synchronicity, I guess. I've been hearing a lot about synchronicity lately, but I'm in a drawing class, which I have on Fridays, and I think this Friday is the last one, or maybe the second the last one, and it will be on ink and calligraphy. And so I had to go out and buy some ink anyway, which I hadn't used a fountain pen since I was a child in grade school. And I remember getting it all over my hands. So this time I was very careful with the paper towels and everything. And I washed my hands right away after I got ink on them. I found that I put the little cartridge into the pen, and as you can see, it wasn't all quite coming out. So I haven't gotten to the Zen phase of this where the ink just flows. But I think that's what I'm looking for in the drawing class. And I really liked Glenn's answers to the questions as well, because I didn't get that far with that part of the lesson. But I'm going to listen to that again because I'll take it to mean that successfully drawing in ink when you have no chance to erase is a matter of getting it right the first time and just going with the flow, and getting your ego out of the way. And being a good tweaker, a good trader, I think also involves getting your ego out of the way, which brings me to the rest of the lesson. So I looked at it. I managed to look at it about 5 days ahead, so rather than at the last minute. So that was good. And I slept on it. And then I thought, when did I have some success that I wanted to talk about that I might want to tweak? And since my vocation is now mainly trading at this point, and things yet to be discovered, I turned to trading for my subject material. And I said, yes, I had some success in the market in 2021. And but all I could really come up with was sort of how I tweaked it back then. I really was tweaking it back then. I tweaked my exit algorithm, and that probably made me years when the market turned around in 2021, and I came up with a way to tighten all my stops, which had been probably too low because I didn't want to lose. And I came up with what I called a kill switch, and it got me out in 2 waves, February and March of 2021. and by then I knew enough from Van's courses on market type and all that I didn't get back in to anything but REITs, which did okay for most of the rest of the year. I hadn't had the courses from Mark Boucher yet, where I would have learned about the bathtub analogy of divergence, where the mutual funds start going into the large caps and you have a stealth bear market in the small caps during the top of the bull. Or I would have been all over Apple and Google and Tesla and all those things in the rest of 2022. So that 2021. So that would have been the tweak of 2021. But then the day after that, it came to me, a tweak I can use now. And that was for my little 2-hour forays into intraday trading, the RLCO system. So I had decided in the course of a stretch exercise of going beyond your edge that I would actually, do some day trading where I don't leave the screen for 2 hours. I just stay there. And that had been something that I'd told myself in the past, oh, I don't want to do that. But I decided to do it. And hey, it worked out pretty well. So now I thought of some tweaks. And I'm thinking back to the trades. The sniper trade of the day on Friday was in Alcoa, I think. Alcoa just went like a rocket. And I actually got what do we call it? An OR3 on the gap with Alcoa, but it stopped out. And I didn't get back into Alcoa. I got into EWZ and it did okay, but Alcoa would have done even better. So I was thinking, what could I tweak so I would have got into Alcoa? And I thought of two things. One is, hey, if my OR3 doesn't work, then maybe I should look for a 1, 2, 3. So that would have worked probably. And I thought of another thing, which is even better. And that was, I've been using TradingView to put trades executed in TradeStation. And the really nice thing about TradingView is you can frame, your where your stop's going to be, where your order is going to be, and where your 2R reward to risk will be. So I put that in. And that frame, once I put it on the screen, I just been kind of sticking with it. And a lot of times when you get a Alcoa just rocketing out the gate, by the time you have it all set up and you've got your order in, it's gone. It's like 10, 15 cents over where you had your stop limit. Well, my tweak is, so what? Because all I have to do is take my mouse and pick up that frame and move it up 15 cents. And if I don't hit when I was framing it, it's still a good trade. I still got a very good chance of 2 times reward to risk. The other thing I can do is I can have the full range stat, because on this 3-minute chart, I'm just using 1/10 of the range stat, but I could use the full range stat to also make sure that it didn't go so far that it would be statistically improbable for me to get my 2R on the trade. So I thought that was a pretty cool tweak. And I came up with a few other ones as I kind of lay in bed, at 6 a.m, just with all this beautiful inner guidance coming in. So I'm really glad that the tweaker lesson was here for me this week. And I think it's a strategy, creative strategy that we should use. Aho.
Luke.
Yeah, you all can hear me? Yeah, okay. Yeah, I feel like I tweak quite a lot when I am trading during the day. I really trade the dollar 5 minute, but I also got other timeframes on, and I do look back during the day and think a different strategy would be ideal for the different markets, especially with the DAX, the Russell, the Euro USD, and the USD Japan yen. Because they're on different time frames and not all aligning at the same time. So I haven't done a lot of back testing on it. I do a lot of paper trading on it, but I haven't set my system rules. So that's something that's a work in progress at the moment. In terms of the exercises, who is in the circle, I would definitely say it's my family. So I want to keep them protected, and I want to keep them in there. How do I keep them in there? It's through my focus and attention, through everything that I do in my life, in my work. It's all for them. And I keep them in there because I constantly review my principles and beliefs with my wife about life, marriage, raising a family, making mistakes, trying to do better, and having the kids have enough resilience for when they leave the house and live their own life. How do we want them best fit for society and for their work, and how they're going to approach their life? And next question: what do you do once? What do you do with it once you have it? Once I have that circle, I enjoy it. Constantly weed it to make sure there's things that we're improving on. Nourish it to make sure that it's growing. A little bit like a garden in terms of that respect. I did listen to the Euro session yesterday, and I found all the speeches were great. I did take Jeff's comment about when you're actually trying to draw the circle. When I started to do it, I was trying to do it from the top, from 12 o'clock till 12 o'clock, going around in a clockwise position. But then when he said, I think it was Quan that said, when you actually do an O as you're writing the letter O in a sentence, we normally start from the 9 o'clock and go around to a 9 o'clock. And I thought that's so much easier to do it that way. So there's different ways to actually do it. And when I practice going from 9 o'clock in an anti-clockwise position, it looks like a circle. I actually prefer to do this exercise to not have a perfect circle, because I find that imperfection can actually I find that more cathartic than just trying to do a perfect circle by doing an O. So I found this exercise in one of the takeaways was try not to be having the perfect circle, just draw it and then just move on. The other thing I thought while you guys were talking was what do I feel like is in this circle? One is family, as I said, and the second is trading. And if I can constantly do the circle and just focus on the drawing, then I can get back to a zero state and make sure that I've got that zero state before I put the next trade on, to make sure I'm managing it properly. And as Glenn was saying, why are we putting the trade on? Is it because we have a fear of missing out? Is it following the rules? Or is it just that we haven't really reset our psychological state to actually get into the trade in the right manner? So that was really good. And I think that's all I've got for today, I hope.
I dropped my stick. God damn it. Hate when that happens. Don't be dropping your stick. Nicole?
So I looked at this last week and I started to think about it even more because there's a sushi restaurant up the street that has this circle. And it didn't dawn on me, honestly, because it just, to me looked like a circle. And when I read this lesson last week, which I thought we were on, so I read it last week, it was as if like I walked by with the dog before I had the new dog that joined us, and I looked at it and I was like, oh my God, there's the Eno circle, or Eno circle, or however you say it, that I call it the Eno circle. And so that was the first thing. The second thing is I didn't draw this on a piece of paper. I went out to the beach because we have this black sand beach, basically, that's right down the street from me. And I went and they took this big stick and I tried to draw a circle without stopping, right? So it kind of came out like, it didn't come out a circle. It kind of came out like, this. And right when I drew it, it was kind of funny because the tide was low, but there's a piece of water that was kind of lapping, and it kind of lapped the part where I was drawing. Anyway, the point being that I realized that when I was drawing this circle and trying to think of like, okay, what I had, there's a couple of things that came to mind. And one of them was, I don't know if it was really successful, but I got what I wanted. And so I had booked on Priceline, and Priceline now advertises hotels as homeless shelter or homeless shelters as hotels. Big brouhaha. Anyway, I went and bitched my face off on Twitter. And then I went to the FTC, and then I faxed, and I want my money back. I want my money back. Right. So it was like this huge fight for the last month. And I finally got what I wanted. But I realized, like, in drawing this, and I went today to do this drawing, right? And I was with the one dog, the new dog, Rogue. And Rogue he was not feeling good. So I didn't want to take too long, And I just realized, like, in that moment, because I just had this long conversation with my best friend in the world and my energy mate, soulmate, Michelle. And it was like, you keep pushing into this space of like, the ego has to have the last word. And so here I get this letter from the like chief executive officer or whatever. And I had just basically spent a month bitching my face off about this. And he's like, well, as a courtesy or as a goodwill gesture, we'll do this for you. And I started to like just ran off this nasty reply, like, who the hell are you with your goodwill gestures? Like, shove it up your butt kind of thing, right? And I'm like, why do you need to say anything? You got what you wanted. For God's sakes, leave it alone. Who cares what they say? Who cares how they say it, And so inside this circle, you're not supposed to have anything. But I had all this BS, right? And I was thinking about it as I was drawing the circle this afternoon, like, what's inside this circle, and the universe will bring you the shit that you really don't want. And it's like, it brings it to you in ways that you're just like, what is going on? And one of the ways it's brought me, like, you need to level up. You need to really think about what you're attracting, is men who are, as I get older, I realize that there are not many women like me who are single, never married, don't have kids, and don't have, all the stuff that like most men have, the house, and I was married 50 years and whatever, like all that other stuff, I've had this different life. And so they don't really know how to deal with the stories, and so there's a lot of judgment there. And I realized as I was listening to one of these guys that I had just met on the beach, it was immediate where I said to myself, why do I feel weird? Like, why do I feel not at ease with this person? What is going on? So I talked to my friend Michelle about it, and she's like, it's a culmination of a lot of things, but the judgment that you are so used to receiving from men about who they think you are, and you thinking that it's okay, is what you're feeling. And so as I was drawing the circle this afternoon, I'm thinking about all of these things and how my ego has gotten the best of me to be the last one to tell somebody off. And that was really what I was thinking about when I was drawing the circle. Is like, I gotta be the one to tell him off. You know, I gotta be the one to, like, let me just tell you, you don't even know who the hell I am, kind of thing. Like, that's what's going through my mind, right? And it was interesting how I dealt with this in a specific situation with the landlord here. And I spent the entire night just like in this fit of anger, like, And then all of a sudden at like 4:30, it was kind of like everything just dropped in the morning. And it was like, you need to speak from your heart with love if this is who you really want to be. And all of a sudden I had to like switch this whole mindset of my ego having the last word. And this is where, like, if you think about all the battles that I'm not talking about battles like wars. I'm talking about my own battles, for God's sakes. How many battles have I been through willingly, to just like be the right one? And so I stopped and I said to myself, you are going to confront this with the love in your heart. And that's how you are going to start that conversation. And believe it or not, that when I started with the love in my heart, this is what, full circle, the circle, right? I hadn't received the letter yet from the goodwill gesture, but everything literally changed at 4:30 on Sunday morning. It was like, I'm going to say this from the love in my heart, not because I love you, but because I love myself and I respect myself enough to say this. And I swear to you, it was like, I felt like every battle that I had freaking just gone at, man, like, I'll tell you off, MFer, like really, right? I really felt like it all just kind of dissipated, and all of a sudden it just kind of like whoosh, just left. And I kid you not, at 7:30 that morning was when I received, on Sunday morning was when I received the email. Now, whether the guy was up at 7:30, I have no idea. Doesn't matter. That's when I got the email. But it seems to me like this whole thing of the NO or circle, when I really sat down and thought about it today, I was like, oh my God, if I had taken that stance in every battle that I have put myself through willingly throughout my life, how much further along in my success would I be? And so that was this circle this afternoon as I was drawing it in the sand with my new dog that has tick disease. And I was doing my exercise because I wasn't going to miss this. Like, I'm doing my exercise today. And this is like, I still had this feeling of, I'm going to tell this guy off. I'm going to write this email. But it was like this kind of feeling of why? And I started to like observe and be aware of myself outside of myself in this moment of drawing the circle, noticing that I still wanted to tell somebody off, even though I got what I wanted. So what's the point? You won. How many battles have been run where they didn't get it, like, oh, well, let's go back and do it again because I didn't get it the way I wanted to. What kind of bullshit is that, So I just really thought about it, and I was just like, it started with, confronting something that had to do with alcoholism, that had to do with something that's been in my life for years, enablement. And it felt like I don't know, it felt really interesting to just kind of like let it dissipate. And all of a sudden, I saw it today in the circle. And so that it didn't have anything to do with like, okay, answering the question, but it was just a very interesting NO circle for me today. So, that was what I learned.
In yesterday's session, I told the little story of the the nearest neighbor approach and how the PSAR was a multiple iterations of tweaking and just wrestling that snake so that it would approximate my trader quality number on my best days when I was really happy with the way I had found the balance between letting it run and preserving profits. And then the freedom that I felt when I was able to sort of just release the responsibility of doing the thinking just to the dot maker. There was something satisfying about the way the dots would just keep marching their way north and pegging along like little steps in a road march. What I was reminded of today was the tweaking around the frog box over the years. What started off as a effort to try to understand the difference between signal and noise and just coming up with a standard definition of it. And then the realization slowly dawning on me of what that frog box could be used for. And more of as something to rely, a building block or a base to rely on, as opposed to anything, absolute or theoretical, fundamental with a great big explanation. In the field when you're trying to get a vehicle unstuck, sometimes all you need is a board to stick under the wheel so you can get just enough traction to get going. It could be gravel, could be straw, could be a piece of canvas. Quite often just a 2x4, just so you can get the thing moving. And then over time, the frog box became more and more useful as crafted rules around the slow frog, the quick frog, and the leap frog, each of which was a tweak trying to deal with what we observed about price action, that a lot of times that if you waited for that hour to elapse, then you missed the easiest move of the day. Twice a week that would happen, 2 times out of 5, that the opening was either in the top or bottom 10% of the daily move, meaning that there was, wherever it started, it left the station and then just kept going the rest of the day. So if you waited the whole hour on the day when it was easiest to see the move, you missed it because you were, being strict on your hourly move. So well, maybe we just go to a half an hour. And then there was some where it would just take off and just go. Quite often after a large gap, that you would get a large gap, and then from there it would either go up or down like a rocket or a falling piano. And so the idea of the quick frog came about, where you could take a frog box and then immediately, if it violated that, it would immediately trigger. But then if it went, but it didn't go a full frog box and started to reverse, I started having to keep track of the working high and low of the day and then tracking a frog box away from that. It was a logical way to sort of get a triangle where it's compressing, and then you get a breakout. But practically it was too hard to trade because there were too many adjustments if you were trying to trade more than one symbol. And then finally, the idea of the hybrid frog box, which was simply to say, when I linked it up with the insight that, the start of the day is simultaneously the high and low. So just maybe straddle that with one frog. Instead of putting a box on either side, just bisect the box with that so you get to a half a frog box, and then learn to tweak that even further and further. Well, after about 6 or 7 years of fighting my way through that whole, step-by-step process, to finally just realize, oh, what I'm really trying to express, after all, is just the minimum manageable risk box anyway. The idea that the more like a critical state, or the more like a doji this thing is, when that doji is located on a critical price, that you have everything that you want. Like you just said, please just go. I don't care what direction you're going to go. Just make it simple and just go, and I'll just tag along, like a hog chasing the turnip truck. Well, that is sort of the evolution of the minimum manageable risk box, that as I started to reduce the size of the execution risk, so that the price where you got in, the smaller that was away from the price that would invalidate the hypothesis, finally it hit me that, oh yeah, that's actually what we want. Because you can either use that as a fractional 1R law, a much smaller than 1R law. So keep your standard position size, but now you're maybe only taking a 0.1 or a 0.2 loss anyway. And then if it fails, you're in the trade that you wanted anyway. And then realizing the seductive lure that, oh, if I make it a 0.2, well, then I could actually have 5 times the size of the position and still only take a 1R loss. And I quickly realized that was sort of the fear and greed taking over, fear of missing out, and then the greed of wanting to get, a very, very large position size. What I eventually reconciled with was the idea of just let it be a 0.2 loss, and then if it works in your favor, you got an extra 0.8 out of what you would normally get if it was a frog, and just be content with that, and then don't lose your mind trying to squeeze every mathematical advantage out of what is essentially an approximation anyway. That you could quickly lose your peace, or at least I could. I quickly lose my peace of mind if I start trying to finagle different position sizes on my standard symbol every time the thing comes around. It was just too hard. And I was willing to trade off the simplicity of just put a standard poker chip on it. If I lose, it's only a 0.2, and then just move on. That turned out to be very freeing and relaxing. It actually helped me get over my perfectionist self, the greedy self, and just say, look, you're looking to achieve a disinterested mind state anyway. So if it's only a 0.2 loss and you stop and reverse into a better trade, you can't be less interested in the trade than that, where you're actually hoping for a 0.2 loss so that you could just get into the better trade. And then if it works, you just say, oh, well, I guess, okay. I didn't get the trade I wanted, but I got the trade that paid, which is still okay. So I spend most of my time, I would say my developmental time and systems thinking time, probably 80% of the time working on tweaks, and at most 20% of the time working on scratching my head and new systems ideas. And I would say that number's probably going down over the last maybe 5 years, because I feel like I've been working on the inside game of tweaking and adjusting more than I have been trying to come up with grand ideas and new ways of thinking about it. I mean, I still get some occasionally, but my effort really the last 5 years has been more on trying to refine technique. And that's probably, me remembering now and again that I'm 65 and wanting to, get more to closure on some stable systems now that I think we know something about implementation. For which I got to thank COVID in that sense, because it's certainly freed up an awful lot of time with nothing else to do but just kind of work on this stuff on a nightly basis and really just dig in and keep shoveling. So, so for me, the tweaking story was really just, for me, where the good ideas come from is when I am actively trying to tweak, and then in the process of tweaking, I look to the side and then notice something else, like, oh, that. So there's something about the attention to detail that occupies my monkey mind and sort of lets the eagle soar a little bit, or the owl soar a little bit, while the rest of my mind is crunching away on some trivia. So for me, the tweaking is almost the price I got to pay in order to get into the more reflective state that I have to stay busy with that part of my mind and keep it occupied, or I can never quiet it enough to get it going. I almost have to create white noise, if I could say it that way, with the tweaking in order to free myself to think about other things. I mean, I noticed that in soccer, when we're going through our standard warm-up rituals, is when I actually am thinking of new drills, because my body already knows what to do. Yeah, I'm going to dribble the ball for the next 15 minutes over these 10 steps and 1,000 touches, but I can already be thinking about what I'm going to do after the drill session. So there's a freeingness in the tweaking. So for me, tweaking is my favorite thing to do, because it's internally satisfying. I feel like I'm doing something, but also I know that occasionally it helps me come up with other good ideas. So that's my story for this week: the frog box and the MMRB and the hybrid frog. So I'm going to hit the tones, and I'm going to invite you to think about the word that comes to your mind. Then we'll go around, and then we have lots of coffee talk time tonight. So listening for the word that bubbles to the surface. Here we go. Glenn.
Nothing.
Nicole.
Enzo.
Dan.
Freeing.
Luke.
Nothing.
Restart.
Yeah, mine is peripheral. So this will move us into coffee talk now. Go ahead, Dan.
I just wanted to say that when I was explaining the experience I had with the tweaking of my trade entries, that as much as sort of the details of what that might bring in terms of better profitability or more trades, I also had an awareness that the ego kind of locks me into a certain way of doing things. I'll think of a detailed plan, and we need, one of us was talking about how you had to have uh, a desire, and then you had, or knowledge, and then you had to have the action to make the knowledge amount to anything. Well, in the middle between the knowledge and the action, you need to have the right plan in if anything complicated or worth having. But you don't want your ego to kind of lock you into that plan as the only way of doing things. And, I must have thought of 5 or 6 other ways of doing things that would either give me better execution or save me time because of this lesson. And it's been sort of a progressive process, learning how to trade these systems. But I felt like I got a little bit of acceleration from this lesson.
I'm reminded with that Enzo that the act of drawing the circle, figuring out what's inside it and then releasing it. Sometimes you draw them so that the circle is closed, and other times they're drawn so that it remains open. There's a certain, almost like a gate or an open bag, and it acts as a releasing function. If you draw it closed and then you redraw it so that it's open or whatever, you draw a corral, but you leave it a way out. One of the principles of war that Sun Tzu talks about is that you always want to leave the opponent a way out of the trap that you've got him in order for you to win bloodlessly. Like you've maneuvered a place and you're going to win, and he realizes that, but if you don't give him a way out back across the river, across the bridge or whatever, then he's motivated to fight to the death, and then that's problematic. Whereas if you can maneuver and then demonstrate a win, maybe he just says, okay, you're better than us. We're just going to go home now, and we're never going to do that again. That's actually more powerful than crushing them and then creating bitterness, and then the next generation wants to get even and all that stuff. So the idea of the partially open Enso is that it can also be a dynamic exit, like an open bag. The owl meditation is like that for me. That the writing of the words on the paper and then the feelings about it and all that stuff, and then putting it in the envelope and then burning the envelope and watching the smoke dissipate has that same kind of mental quality as the Enzo does for me. Just whatever I am, not perfect, but whatever I am is exactly what that thing is. And okay, that's exactly where I was. That just happened, and then there's a freeing feeling. So I get the same feeling when I do the Enzo exercise as I do as the owl meditation. I've noticed. Oh. Yeah, Glenn.
Drawing the circles also reminded me of my Alexander technique lessons, which is all about proper use of the body and only using the effort necessary to complete an action. Often when we're holding a pen, we're really holding it and adding a whole lot of tension and extra energy that we really don't need to use to hold the pen. And even when we're sitting or not sitting properly, there's walking, opening a door, all of our daily actions we can add a whole lot of extra stuff in there that we don't really need to have. And that's what I felt as I drew the circle, was how much extra stuff is in there. And I've had, you can apply that in lots of different areas, looking to find, strip out the friction in completing an action. Where's the friction? And trying to grease the wheels so that it's effortless, is easy. So uh,
I put in a video in here because I think that and she competing in a katana sword. I've never seen it before, but it somehow made it into my view. And I thought it was a good indication of this like where we're at in this lesson. And I just looked at it, I mean, it's a very interesting video for this little girl to be doing such an incredible job with this katana sword. And I thought, wow, imagine if you could just do that with your ego. Imagine if you could just do what she did with the katana sword with your ego. And I think you'll like it, Ken. It's actually a really good video.
Yeah, she's a little monster. She has no hesitation, that's for sure.
Yeah, she is just all on that, But I just kind of liked it because I thought, not liked it, but I just thought, this is the no fear, but coming from her heart. Like she really came from her heart. She really loves what she's doing. You can just tell she loves it. And like, I think that's even in the battles that I face, if I can just come from that space of like, all right, do you love yourself enough to not take this battle on in the way of anger, as opposed to doing something a lot more meaningful with this conversation or this, whatever you're doing, instead of having to prove that you are the one that was right all along.
In the movie Hero with let's see, Jet Li and Tony Leung and Maggie Chung, Zhang Jia. There's a moment in there where the master swordsman in there is working on his calligraphy, but with a giant wooden paddle of a pen and a great big sandbox, almost like your beach sand, and he's trying to draw the symbol for duty and trying to capture everything he understands about that character in the way he draws that form, and then just smooth it over and keep practicing. It was kind of the instant connection between you and the whole universe and everything out there that is about courage or duty, and then expressed through you into that clear. How aligned are you with that sacred form or concept is the idea behind there. Is it's interesting, in the Asian cultures, the connection between calligraphy and art and the martial art is very, very close. Like Musashi was really a noteworthy sculptor and artist in his own right, which really comes through in the various films of his life. A really important part of who he was. Uh-huh.
I was just looking up about owl meditation. It looked pretty complicated. Interesting though. Yeah. You lost your sound,
Yeah,
Ken?
our owl meditation.
OWL
Yeah,
meditation you mentioned.
yeah. The one that we do, complicated. Well, I guess.
Oh no, I don't. Do we do an owl meditation?
Oh yeah. It may have actually been one of our lessons.
Oh,
Well, I know it's in the foundations. I thought maybe I'd put it in the creativity.
oh,
I'll send it to you.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I'm always looking for a simple method of meditation that maybe I'll like better than some other methods that sort of work but don't really work consistently.
You're on mute again.
It's very easy. I think this one's the owl is easy,
Mhm.
and also works. I swear by it.
Look forward to seeing it.
Let's see. I'll have to check the rest of the curriculum, and if it's not in there, I'll add it to one of the next lessons. I thought I had it in here.
I may have missed it or skipped it, and I still need to go back and catch up on things that I sort of skipped along the way.
It's in the file. I just sent it. The file.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
I think one of the things with meditation is that like a lot of people think they have to like clear their mind. You know, there's like this, they're not allowed to have anything in their mind. It's like, oh no, if I have thoughts, then it's not a meditation. But that's what meditation is. It's just watching the thought. You know, it's like the other morning at 4:30 when my anger was like at the peak of the pinnacle of success for anger, you know, and all of a sudden it was just like some kind of switch turned and I was watching this as it was happening. And it was like just being aware of how you get in certain circumstances, how much you go unconscious in the moments that you think you're really being conscious. You know, one of the things that I find that the universe brings us is that brings us the things that we focus on the most. And like, even if we're focusing on what we want to get rid of, we're focusing on it. And all of a sudden it brings it to you in so many ways that you kind of go, but I don't want that. It's not what I wanted, you know, and then you're still thinking about it. So one of the things that like the other morning when this whole thing happened, and it was a switch, it was literally like boom. And I just noticed myself in the moment of getting so angry. And I thought, are you running the same thing over and over again? Are you running that same story over and over again so that you can relive it? Is this what you want to really relive? Or is it, you know, there's a certain woman that I think of and I say, what would so and so do? You know, because she's the kind of the epitome of what I want to emulate. And so I thought about it and I was like, she would do it completely different. And so I had to really think about like, how do you really want to show up in this space? Because how you show up in this time is how you're going to show up in every time. So you're setting that precedent right now. And if you set that precedent right now, you're going to set it for as long as you're here. So what is the precedent that you're really going to set? And I think that like that's something that I can find so many things that the universe has brought me to say, you've focused on this. So now what's your unconscious program into focusing on this? You know, the unconscious program would have been to fire off an email without even thinking about it, shove your goodwill up your ass, kind of thing. Like, you got what you wanted, for God's sakes, just leave it. It's good. You're good. There's no reason to make them think that, or they're not going to think like you did. So it doesn't matter what they think.
I learned at one point that if I vented my anger, sometimes I would still hear myself talking that way all day long.
Mhm.
But if I just kind of just let it go, then whatever it was, hopefully within 5 or 10 minutes, I'd moved on to something else.
Yeah. That was like the meditation, instead of like, is it easy? I just kind of, like this morning, I was like, okay, I'm just going to sit here and think, not even think, but allow these thoughts to go through my head, and there are times when I'm thinking, so. But
Well, one of our earlier lessons was thinking through the process through the eyes of another character, or another person, or another role model, and yeah, think what would they do, and yeah, so that was
I missed that, obviously, because that would have been a very good one for me
well,
to.
that's one of the essential core teachings of his entire process is being able to get a separation from the thing by consciously adopting another role. So it frees you from that stickiness, and now you can if you can do it through one point of view, you can circumnavigate the elephant, and you can start building that repertoire of different points of view. That was Edward de Bono's idea on systematic creativity, the six thinking hats, where each color hat represented a certain particular value of thinking. One was curious, one was playful, one was the accountant,
Oh,
and stuff like that. And so that was a way to be systematic, and then not to be tied to your first response all the time. You could learn to adopt different roles, but then it gets more to Glenn's point about, well, who's watching the watcher? Who is it that is watching these things? And if I'm aware that there is a thing watching it, then it must be me watching the watcher watch the price, and then you start getting this infinite regression of points of view about who's watching me, and now who is this that's talking, and you end up getting into an interesting pathway and layers of consciousness there. Hey, well, I'm gonna hit the stop record button there. Let you guys take a break. We got the other session starting here about 8:30 or so. So I'm gonna do a quick checkout here in Kansas and say great stuff. Gave me a lot to think about. Um, really good fellowship tonight, and appreciate your insights. So aho from Kansas.
Oh, good night.
oh.
Good night.